Welcome to the Xenomorphic Possibilities Podcast, episode number 7, Prometheus, the Spoiler Edition. Welcome to this podcast. This is episode number 7, as I just said, and this podcast will go over some of the details in Prometheus and some of my thoughts about the details and just some, just general thoughts after my second viewing of Prometheus. So I did a previous video about 10 minutes in length where I have a spoiler-free video. If you've not yet seen Prometheus, I would recommend you watch that video rather than this one. Go watch Prometheus before watching the rest of this video. I do not want to ruin this movie for you, so that is my forewarning to you. So with that said, let's get into the meat and potatoes of Prometheus. The first thing, since this is the Xenomorphic Possibilities Podcast, I wanted to just attack the question of xenomorphs. Are xenomorphs in this movie? And the answer is, quite frankly, yes, they are. So they're not the story of the Alien franchise. Alien, Aliens, Alien 3, Alien Resurrection was a story about Ripley and a story about the aliens themselves. This story of Prometheus is instead the story of the space jockey, the story of the engineer, the story of that being, that new alien, so to speak. And so that's the story of Prometheus. It's not about the alien. That's not the centerpiece of it. They are a part of this world, but it's really a story about the space jockey. So who is that guy in Alien that just sitting on the chair, what I thought was a gun, a missile turret? That's what I thought that chair was, a missile turret with a dead guy on it with a xenomorph that popped out of him. So xenomorphs. So they're in here, and they're in here twice to my knowledge. You have a mural that you see when you get into the headroom, the worship room, and this is an interesting mural because what you see depicted before you is a xenomorph that has his hands stretched out like he's being crucified. You have imagery of what appears to be perhaps a queen alien behind that. And in the lower right, if you really look at it, you also have a face hugger at the bottom right. So you have the life stages of the alien here. And this is something that it seems like it was here for a while. So the alien found at the end of this film is not the first instance of the xenomorphs in this world. So get rid of that notion first off. Xenomorphs were here. They were perhaps a tool used by the engineers to wage war against a competing society or something like that. So that's something to note, that they knew about the xenomorphs and they perhaps created them themselves or developed these things, and they worship these things to some capacity. So the head they seem to worship, perhaps what they may have also worshipped these xenomorphs. So the end of the movie, you do see a xenomorph here, and it's an interesting way this xenomorph comes to be. The engineer, the sole surviving engineer on this ship, is implanted from a giant squid face hugger of the xenomorph. So you have the squid, which was birthed out of the black goo. The black goo, I'm speculating here, is a highly concentrated version of DNA that you would find in the egg. So my theory is these people, these engineers, found the eggs, and they found the eggs and they had an accident, right? That's where you have the LV-426, the first alien. You have the accident of crash landing in LV-426 with the chest popped out of the engineer. So you had that accident. And they wanted to figure out, after that happened, that ship's been there a long time, I'm imagining, and probably before this even started. So I'm imagining these black goo vases were designed to be safer to transport versions of eggs. So highly concentrated, you could do with one black jar, one black vase, what you could do with a whole room full of eggs. So one vase equates that of a whole room full of eggs, perhaps. And it was their intention to use these black vases to create xenomorphs. And it is my thought that in this world, human beings were created to be hosts to these xenomorphs. That the creation scene at the very beginning of this movie was done. We were created in this world to be used to create xenomorphs. That they would drop off these black vases, and we would be the hosts of tons of these different xenomorphs. And that is the reason for humans' existence. That we were created in a need for xenomorphs, which in this world, the xenomorphs are warriors for this breed, for these engineers. That they're able to transport these and wage war against a different species using the xenomorph. So that's my prediction right there off the bat. And beyond that is the idea that the xenomorphs were perhaps, worshipped. They saw their power and they admired what they could do. And that's why I believe at the end of the movie, you had the sole surviving engineer go kind of crazy and want to go back to Earth to implant all these humans. Another thought as far as the sole surviving engineer as to why he was there in the first place is I'm thinking he perhaps went a bit crazy, right? He perhaps killed off the rest of his people there in that ship. That he wanted to kill off the human race with these xenomorphs, and perhaps everyone else second thought it and thought these people are not worth killing to create xenomorphs. Perhaps that was a thought, and that's perhaps why this guy was alone and kind of crazy. He didn't seem mentally stable at the end of this movie, and I think he is not the norm. If you encounter a different engineer, I don't believe they are fundamentally bad and want to hurt people. So that is a thought as well. Beyond all that, the creation of the xenomorph. So you have this face hugger, you have the black goo, and that all creates a xenomorph. So basically here, I noticed also that when the worm got the black goo, it turned into kind of the implantation part of the face hugger. So it was kind of a part of it, but not the whole thing. So you see in this movie lots of different aspects of the face hugger. And it's interesting to see in Alien how it boiled out of just eggs, versus in this movie, it's more of like an experimentation lab. And then by the time Alien is out, you see a mature species that it doesn't seem like it was baked up in some science lab. So there's more questions to be answered here as far as how this all went down. And that's an intriguing question to ask, I guess. So I'm hoping we'll find out more about that in Prometheus 2. Moving on, I had a question. I just wanted to share how awesome it was to be revealed what that chair was for in Alien. So in Alien, you see the space jockey, and he's on the chair, and it basically looks like a huge gun to me, or a male part of genitalia as well as is Giger's art that it is, But it was cool to see it actually function, right? It's actually the pilot chair, and the whole notion of that being a mask, that elephant mask, was an interesting thing for sure. I personally would have loved to see an elephant type of a creature, but I appreciate their intelligence in creating something more intelligent that's a mask that is worn when you're flying, things like that. So I think that was a pretty cool part of this whole thing. Another thing I wanted to just talk a little bit about is the whole LV planets. So when Elizabeth Shaw goes and discovers this arrangement of planets, she finds the LV planets. And these are planets that have a sun, all that kind of stuff. And Elizabeth Shaw decides that, LV-223 is the one to look for, is the one to go to first because of its properties. My question is, This seems like a military base. LV-223 is a scientific research base or a military base. It is not their home world. I'm curious if they have more inhabitants on some of the other planets in this solar system, right? That perhaps if they explored all the planets, they would discover that going to a different planet would have been a better option as to ascertain where they come from, things like that. If they wanted their questions answered, LV-223 was obviously the wrong choice. So I'd love to see those other planets explored and just more in depth as to what this solar system is all about. So leaving off the film is, where did these creatures come from? Where did the engineers come from? Elizabeth Shaw is the sole survivor of this journey, along with mutilated David. So you have Elizabeth Shaw seeking out and chasing her answers. And it seems to me that this will be pretty awesome because what we have here is the same formula that made the Alien series great. You have a strong female lead. You have her alone. She's lost her husband. She's lost all people, and she's alone now. This is her move. This is her franchise now to explore her character, to explore where she wants to go with it, and to explore her journey. And this will be a journey that consumes her life. I believe by the end of this series, Elizabeth Shaw will be killed in some capacity, and that is where it will end. Similarly to how Ripley died, and that's how that ends, So we have that same arc of this is your journey now. This is your life, and I'm excited to see that journey. And Elizabeth Shaw was done remarkably well. I loved her complexity as a character, having the religious background, the faith in God background, as well as a scientific background. So I'm really curious to see how this develops. David was remarkably surprising to me. The android in this film was quite good, and he made the movie work in a level that was awesome. He had kind of a HAL 2000 from Space Odyssey 2000 kind of feel to him, and a lot of the scenes at the beginning were very, very just different, and I loved those scenes. So that was a cool thing to see. So David surprised me in a good way, and one of my inclinations is David evil, right? That's a question I have. David, knowingly, I think, infected Elizabeth Shaw's husband. And he asked him, I forget his name, but he asked him, are you willing to do whatever it takes to find your answers? He asked that question before he gave him the drink. And once he said, yes, I will do anything, I think David saw that as a sign that it's okay to put this thing in his drink and see what happens, because that could find the answer. And that's what happened, and I think David was in the wrong there in a big way. But, so that happened. And it's David, you get a creepy feeling from him. You don't quite know, are his motives good? Are they bad? Or is he just a computer that's following out orders and all the logical things about it that make him run, right? So that's an interesting thing about David. I don't know what to think of him quite. He comes off as evil, but I'm not sure if he is. So that's a question that I'm not sure about yet. Last up today, just want to talk about the end credits. The very end, it shows footage from Wayland. It gives you a date, though, at the end that something special is happening on October 11th, 2012. That is 10/11/12. Interesting because those are numerical numbers, 10, 11, 12. Also interesting because that is a Thursday. A lot of people speculated that this would be the DVD release of Prometheus. Tuesday would be a DVD release of Prometheus. What I did discover is this is the first day of this year's New York Comic Con. So it is my guess that some announcement will be made on 10/11/12. Perhaps it is about Prometheus 2. Perhaps it's about something else. But there is something big happening this year on 10/11/12. So stay tuned for that. With that said, that'll do us for today's episode. about Prometheus. And as I said in the last episode, I'm going to be back for a lot of episodes, basically tackling questions that Prometheus posed. There are a lot of questions that Prometheus asked, and I will do my job, the best of my ability, to answer some of those questions. So there's a great forum going on over at prometheus-movie.com, and I'm going to be using that as a source for a lot of these questions, because there are some smart people over at those forums, and I'm going to explore their answers and provide some of my own. So stay tuned for that. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/TCHATN, for those upcoming videos. Aloha. Thanks for watching.